Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. Got a special Tuesday afternoon edition, a special Gammon Brown edition, kind of bye-week edition. We're still feeling the pain from the Bengals loss, getting ready for the Jags this Sunday in Jacksonville, and then kind of celebrating a little bit the Chase Young, not only his signing, but then he had his first practice the other day with the 49ers. And, we'll talk about all this stuff here in just a moment. But first, let me introduce Gammon Brown. You can find him on Twitter or X at Brown Gammon. And you've probably seen him on other shows. I've seen him a bunch of times with a bunch of different creators. Most recently, I think it was with Terradome. He had some good points that I was parroting later in the week. So it's always a good sign when I'm learning something and then repeating it. So Gammon, welcome to the show, and tell everybody a little bit about yourself, anything you'd like them to know, anything you'd like to promote, anything I may have missed, anything like that.
Yeah. So Gammon Brown in the Army, and just promoting this show, like and subscribe. All right. And I appreciate you extending out an invitation and putting me on the platform.
Absolutely. It's always fun to work with new folks. I do a bunch of weekly shows, and so I like to get in, people from opposing fan bases or just new people that maybe are starting to work their way up into this type of thing. And, it's always just fun. I had a lot of help getting started. And so I always like to try and help and give back myself. So we got Red Jet Shell in the house. She's saying, let's go Niners. What's up, Shell?
Bang, bang.
Bang, bang. We got Bryant Culp acknowledging Red Jet, saying smash the like button. Thank you, Bryant. We appreciate it. And everybody probably knows Bryant is a big Jake Moody fan. He's also a pretty big Sam Darnold fan. So I think he was not minding my article before the Bengals game where I said maybe best to rest Brock Purdy, let his head rest, let his arm rest. Not risk him without Trent Williams out there, that type of thing. But he's saying, hey, Ted and Gammon, welcome, Bryant. Appreciate it. Red Jet saying, let's go. Oh, let's get into it. We're about to just a second here. Thank you for your service. Indeed. It's amazing everyone who's served to help keep our country free and to protect our interests and all those things. It's a big commitment and a big honor for sure. So thank you for your service from me as well. Don't be moody. We got this.
Oh, I love the dad jokes. I love it.
Yeah. Silly Fun Guy stops by quite a bit. He's a Rams fan. He's pretty cool. And he usually drops a dad joke or two during the show. I'm trying to remember the last one. It was actually pretty damn funny because usually they're punny, but they're not very funny. But anyway, so how do you want to kick things off? Do you want to talk a little bit about the Bengals game? Do you want to talk a little bit about where should we start with things?
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of talk about the last flavor or taste that we had in our mouth with the Bengals. That was a really kind of tough game to watch. There was some good and there was some of kind of basically what we've been seeing the 2 weeks prior to that. If you had to pick during that 3-game losing streak, who would be your MVP on defense and who would have been your MVP on offense during that 3-game losing streak?
Who would be mine?
Hard to do because we're talking about during our worst streak, but who was the diamond in the rough during this rough patch, this stretch that we had?
I mean, Kittle played well against the Bengals. I feel like he played pretty well against Minnesota too, but maybe he wasn't used much against Minnesota. And then with the Browns, there was just no Kittle at all, so hard to put him as MVP. For for defense, it would have to be someone like Hargrave for me, because Dre and Fred, Fred was obviously incredible against the Cowboys, but then he's kind of been struggling ever since, I would say, somewhat. Huff has struggled. Moody Ward struggled. Lenore's been pretty good. Maybe Lenore on defense.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so fascinating is a team with absolute stars, aliens, extraterrestrials out of this world on both sides of the ball. And that's how rough this stretch has been, where we're basically pining through, right? Like we're combing the rug at this point, trying to figure out like who actually has played well during this stretch. Like who's that superstar player that we could be like, hey, you know what? Things have been rough, but this guy's been trying to carry us the whole time. And that's what's so kind of, I think, boggling about this. Because even though you brought up Hargrave, it's, when I look at that Bengals game, it's hard for me to say Hargrave played well. He's actually having more double teams being taken on, but I feel like this defensive line, that's really where it all starts. Like, I think fans are coming around to the idea that our offensive line we didn't invest enough there, right? To kind of keep, allow this offense some holes, some gaps, some breathing room, some space, right? To allow Purdy the time to process, to throw a good anticipatory throw. He's right now you're looking at Purdy and he's going like, I don't know. Because it used to be, hey, I know Banks is there, Williams is there. So now I can just be safe on the left side. Because I know if I'm going to if there's any penetration that's going to come through, it's going to be either from Brendel or you right on that kind of that right side. But when we look at transition over the defensive line, when I'm watching the game, because I think the coach, I don't know if you had a chance to kind of watch him, but he kind of brought up a fact that Warner was making business decisions. So then I started watching Warner. And then as I was watching Warner, then all of a sudden I started watching like Greenlaw. You know how like sometimes you're scouting a player and then all of a sudden another player just kind of pops up on your screen. And when I looked at Greenlaw, I was just looking at the angles that he was taking that he just normally commits with just savagery in the hole. And instead, what I saw from Warner and from Greenlaw were two guys who looked, I don't want to say lost, but they usually don't second guess what's kind of going on. And they can usually diagnose the run play, pass play, and then what gap to blow up. And when I looked at it, I was going like, why does, because it looked like Warner was playing hurt, but you look at it, he's taking these bad angles that's kind of exposing his body in a rough way. Like I saw Mixon just get a good shot on him, but it was because, he wasn't in the hole like how he usually is. And when I looked at that, I was going like, what is going on? Why isn't he hitting those holes? You're looking at this defensive front and they're punching the wrong gaps when it comes down to it. So now on that secondary level, the secondary level doesn't know where to go because this defensive line isn't working in unison. I almost feel, and Ted, you can tell me what you think about this, but it's kind of like a shooter in the NBA, right? Like your Curry, your Klay Thompson, that sort of thing. And when those guys their shots aren't falling, they start chasing shots that they shouldn't chase. Like it's like, let me just start filling it up, trying to fill up the basket, taking these unnecessary shots. When I'm looking at these guys on this defensive line, I think they're, you got Chris Kasarik, a raccoon on meth, just coming at you, right? And he's like, you guys got to win your one-on-ones. And so now I think these guys, instead of containing, because you saw Burrow break out for some monster runs, kind of right up the gut. So instead of these guys working as a unit to contain, curtail, and then just really squeeze that pocket, right? And instead, I think these guys are being told, like, you guys just got to win these one-on-ones. We're paying you $20 million, you $18 million, you $30 million, right? Like, list is kind of going on and on. So I feel like these guys are pressing so hard because now they're not in unison and they're not really working as a unit, is kind of what I was seeing.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And, you mentioned Hargrave getting double teamed a lot again and against the Bengals, and then that opened up Armstead, who did have 2 sacks. He had the one missed sack that was pretty painful. I mean, where kind of everybody missed him, but really Armstead was the only one who sort of got both hands on Burrow.
Was that the one where Burrow broke like 3 like hand tackles and he pretty much it iced the game at that point?
No, this was one of the early drives in the game, maybe the first drive of the game.
Okay.
But yeah, but Burrow had some really powerful runs. I was, amazed to see him because, we'd been hearing about this strained calf all season, and I'd been making excuses for the Bengals all season, saying like, anybody who's got these guys in the high teens, like you're missing it, because as soon as Burrow's better, they're going to be a lot better. And, I figured that when I looked at the schedule before the season started, I really circled 3 games, and it was Cowboys, Bengals, and Eagles as the 3 pretty surefire Super Bowl contenders that we would face this year. And the Bengals have been playing like that the last 2 games against us and against the Bills. They are starting to look again like a Super Bowl contender. The other games obviously were the Ravens, the Jags, and the Seahawks twice, which got coming up here. It makes sense what you said, that if the D-line is out of position, and I think another thing too about Dre Greenlaw is he's just been banged up. He hasn't been 100% physically, and I think that's really been hurting him. He obviously missed the Browns game, and our run defense really suffered. And he came back for the Vikings, but they still ran the ball pretty well for a team that doesn't run the ball very well. And then obviously the Bengals gashed us, not just with Mixon, but with Burrow, as we were just discussing. And I'm pretty sure it was Mixon who trucked Dre Greenlaw too. I think that's something you kind of were talking about earlier, basically where you expect Dre Greenlaw to dominate, and Mixon just bowled him over. Like it was no big deal. So, and then, I think part of it is the run defense. I think part of it is Isaiah Oliver is burnt toast in pass defense. And when he wasn't getting burned, then Mooney Ward was busy getting penalties called on them. So it was a tough showing by our defense, and the offense struggled as well. But it's kind of interesting with Purdy, because he's good sort of until sort of the ends of games when you put too much pressure on him, and then he sort of falls apart a little bit. And I would say also he appears to be a fair weather quarterback at this point. He has definitely struggled in the rain in Cleveland, and I was there for the wild card game against the Seahawks. He struggled a bit in the first half. And then the sun came out, and the field and the ball both dried up in the second half, and he torched the Seahawks in the second half of that game. And so I'd say it's legitimate to be a little concerned about Brock Purdy anytime forecast is for rain.
Yeah, I'm definitely scared when it comes down to rain and rain games with this team, because then even our kicker was sliding around, trying to make a field goal. And it was something that I kind of, on Eric Crocker's show, I brought up the fact that, our rookie kicker, he's not the best in adverse weather. And I got that not from me, but basically, like a counterpart, kind of like you, like a content creator, somebody who covers the Wolverines, right? And I had all the fans saying to me, like, well, that can't be true because he played in Michigan. So then he just automatically has to be good in, bad weather. And that's, so then I looked at that and I just wondered if anybody, and then everybody was like, oh my gosh, he's not doing so well in the rain. And I was like, I kind of don't want to be like, I told you so, but it wasn't even me who said it. I was just me kind of relaying that kind of information. So yeah, rain is probably not our forte at this moment.
No doubt. And I think there was some similar line of reasoning with Brock Purdy, where people said, oh, Iowa, terrible weather, he must be a good bad weather quarterback. But right. I guess some people who went back and looked through it, there's only about 3 or 4 games that had any significant rain in his college career, and they weren't even like monsoon type games or anything like that. So Maybe not as much as you might think, thinking about the weather in Iowa per se. So, just because you play in a place that has bad weather doesn't mean that you actually played a lot of football in it, oddly enough. So I think that could be true for Moody and for Brock Purdy a little bit too. And then, of course, we saw Moody slip on the turf in Minnesota too, which, obviously it could be slippery, I suppose. It's just tough when it's dry to have that.
We don't like turf either.
No rain, no turf. Oh, it's crazy. Shell says the defense and offense have totally lost their identity at this point. Before that, she had a comment where she said that we could have had Burrow, Higgins, and Chase. So I know we could have had Higgins because we took Ayuk in front of him. And obviously we could have had Jamar Chase because he went 5th overall when we took Trey Lance 3rd. Burrow, though, was number 1 overall. And I'm pretty sure there were some teams that tried to move up to get him.
Oh, gosh.
And the Bengals were just like, no, sorry. Maybe next year.
Before he was even drafted, they already gave him the playbook, everything. They're like, but we're not going to
plus
outwardly
he's from
say
Ohio,
Yeah.
and maybe a lot of people don't know that he started out at Ohio State and ended up leaving to go to LSU because he couldn't get playing time, and so. So it's a real reunion, him being back with the Bengals. So I agree with Higgins and Chase, Shell, but Burrow, I don't think anybody was getting Burrow but the Bengals. They unless I guess we tanked better than they did or something. That might be the only way. But there was no one was trading up for that, to my knowledge. But if somebody has heard anything different, be sure and let me know. Maybe I got my wires crossed there.
Back to her other comment where she said it's like the defense and offense totally lost their identity. I think what it is that they have the fundamentals aren't there. And so while everyone's trying to throw Steve Wilkes under the bus, I'm really looking at Chris Kocurek, the defensive line coach. He's got I don't know, I'd have to sit here with my calculator and calculate all the money that's on, you know what I mean, for his starting.
I think it's like 17 for Armstead, and I think, was it 19 or 21 for Hargrave, and now Bosa, the $35 million man,
our quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you got Chase with his on his last year. So I mean, you're looking, gosh, that's at least 80 million, I think. See, 20, 40, some 30. Yeah, it's got to be about around 80 million. So honestly, and I think that's what's kind of happening is it's reverberating. And then when we look at the offensive line, you kind of you're getting what you that old saying, you get what you pay for. Yeah. There were so many times during the 3rd round, especially when we knew Alex Mack was his last year. That's when we should have gotten Alex Mack's replacement. Like a 3rd round center instead of like an undrafted journeyman center. That shoring up the right guard, right tackle. Like all those 3rd round picks really could have been put to use there. I really wish
Creed Humphrey instead of Aaron Banks. That was later, but still, yeah. I was wanting a center myself, Gammon. I'm with you there.
Brian Cole, that was an underrated comment, but Cleveland is not an easy place to kick in. It is absolutely horrendous. And then Phil Dawson, right? We got Phil Dawson from Cleveland.
Yeah. That was what I was regurgitating. And then I screwed it up, and I was saying that it was Nedney. And they're like, dude, Nedney never played for the Browns, Ted. And it was Phil Dawson had talked about how it was a trick. You had mentioned that on Terradome show, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was, and he came in and started breaking like even some of Jerry Rice's records, but he was automatic in Cleveland. So by the time when we got him, and I talked to there's not a lot of Cleveland Brown fans around in the Army, so they're hard to find, but I found like a couple, and they were so, I've never seen a place so bummed to have lost a kicker, but they were like, Phil Dawson was the man. I knew he was the man, except for maybe Chicago when we got oh gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
Robbie Gould.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already been one season. I'm already forgetting his name.
Good as gold. Good as gone. Yeah. Randy Daytona says Parsons, so we could have Micah Parsons. But then Red Jet put me in my place. She said, no, Ted. What I meant was in terms of getting to Burrow, Higgins, and Chase, I meant our defense have missing chances to stop the run pass. Like, get them. Like, Like, get them good. I got it.
Yeah,
got it.
wrap up tackle that you know, the fundamentals in any sport. So I mean, that's the thing is I don't know all the fundamentals on a defensive offensive line, but you can kind of get an idea when I'm starting to see someone like Greenlaw or Warner hesitate, looking lost, taking one step to left, and then immediately cut back right. And I'm kind of looking at what's in front. I just know that we're the men up front aren't doing their job.
There you go. Bill Nye, the science guy, says Bengals could have had Mahomes and took a wide receiver who's no longer in the league. Yeah, and like the 49ers, we took Solomon Thomas, number 3 overall. Ooh. And people go, well, Ted, we didn't want a quarterback. We didn't have the O-line, we didn't have the weapons, the D wasn't ready for it yet. We could have ruined Mahomes. Okay, fine. Then what about Deshaun Watson, which I know he's had trouble since then, but at the time he was a good pick. He just won the national championship. He did have a strong start to his career. And then if you still want to say, okay, yeah, no quarterbacks at all. I just said, hey, I think we took the wrong guy from Stanford because Christian McCaffrey went number 9 overall in that draft. So
speaking of Deshaun Watson,
and he did bring up, he said, you can do that with any team. I get it. You can play the what if game forever, but it's fun sometimes just to kind of be like, what? Oh man, can you imagine if we had done this and that and da. Or just got Cousins instead of Jimmy G. I mean, hard to watch Cousins play the other night. And then the only thing I always mentioned about Cousins was like, and he's never injured. And guess what? Boom, tears his Achilles.
The week that we were playing the Browns, I was going into a convenience store, right, like a 7-Eleven, and I watched this husband and wife. They were both Browns fans. And the husband had on like a Watson jersey, and then the wife, I don't know what jersey she was wearing, but it wasn't a Watson jersey. And I was like, that's a loyal woman right there. If you can walk around with your man in a Watson jersey, just confident as all get up. I was like, she's a keeper, absolutely 100% a keeper,
no doubt. Beats and rhymes. There we go. We try and sling the bars when we can. Here's Silly Fun Guy. Says, shout to people who want to know what the opposite of in is. In other words, shout out to those people. What the opposite of in is. So yes, very punny, not always that funny, but thank you, Silly Fun Guy. One of the few cool Rams fans out there, so always welcome here, Silly. Randy Atona says, looks like Sun Satellite Shell.
No, I know. I think it's Target.
Red
so
Jet
he wants to fly to Target and then play his conch. Like my family loves Target too. There ain't nothing wrong with it, Randy.
It was like the
maybe
Hawaiians,
after the show we'll all go to Target.
The Polynesian Islanders doing the conch at sunset.
Yeah.
No, it's Red Jet Shell. That's what it is. It took me a minute.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
She's here in the audience, and Randy is saying hi in a very creative way. I love that, Randy. He also came up with the name for my Monday show with Pete Burge, who goes by Pedro, and he came up with the I voted for Pedro. I was trying to think of the Napoleon Dynamite theme for it, and Randy came up with that. So credit to Randy for that. Shell says, I love my Ted. Ha ha ha. Teddy. Ha ha ha. Thank you, Shell. Feelings mutual. You're amazing, no doubt about it. David Akers, we got from the Eagles. We got Phil Dawson from Cleveland. We got Robbie Gold from the Giants. Well, but he had been at the Giants for like 1 year after like his whole career at the Bears. So Bears fans probably they were hoping to get him back.
Yeah. Before
they got Cairo Santos or whoever they have now. Who's pretty good. David Akers, longest Niners field goal. How long is that? 58?
No. I think he kicked like a 61 yarder. I can't remember. It because I think that the record, I think the record is 63-yard field goal. I can't remember, but that wasn't by Justin Tucker. But maybe Justin Tucker broke that. But I think 63 yards is the longest field goal. But I think Akers did it like 60, 61. I can't remember.
For the longest time, it was the guy who kicked it sort of like toe first because he had no toes.
Yeah. He had the weird little makeshift boot that was kind of like rounded off there. Yeah.
let's see here. Watson was on the MVP track. Yeah, he was playing really well before that whole. I mean, we were going to try and trade for him. I mean, basically, people say that the package we used to move up for Lance was previously, identified and ready to go to trade for Deshaun Watson if that hadn't happened. So gets hurt. I'm not sure what that is. Tarjay. Don't know what that one is either.
Oh,
that...
Target.
Tarjay.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey. Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely. That's the reason why you have the conch with you. So when your significant other, your spouse is out there shopping in Target, in order to call the family back in the center to assemble.
Meet at the
bring all the carts back in the center. Absolutely.
There you go. I went there on Halloween Day to try and get like some Halloween tablecloths and safety pins. They were out of safety pins. They're out of the Halloween. But of course, my son was able to find some toys there. He found like a triple, like a police truck, fire truck, helicopter, triple toy. So at least he came away happy. That was good news. But most of the stuff I went to get was sold out. That's what happens when you go on the day of a big holiday.
Absolutely.
Poor planning on my part. And there we go. Crazy day at the office. Sorry to hear that. 63 for acres. That's pretty lengthy.
Rookie stuff.
I bagged that at the Walmart. Walmart's an interesting place for sure. Not a lot of them out here in California, though. At least not in the Bay.
Definitely not in Oregon anymore. They have packed up, shipped out. What So I've got a question for you. So
yeah.
So we've got these three players that are they're working their way back in, right? So and out of those three, so we got Luter, the young defensive end, is it Beal?
Robert Beal out of Georgia.
Robert Beal. And then Womack, Beal's this is a red shirt year for him. Was really excited about Luter, 6'1", I believe can run the man kind of defensive scheme that Wilkes wants to run. But I feel like this is going to be a red shirt year for him as well. But the only guy that I really see having a chance to kind of come in, maybe bounce one of these veteran guys out, would be like a guy like Womack, because Ambry Thomas kind of just seems like a dead man walking. I mean, when they're looking to bring in Dante Johnson, I mean, I have to look at Ambry Thomas, and it's just so crazy the fall that Ambry Thomas has had, right? Because it didn't feel like, well, now it feels like forever ago, but it really wasn't too long ago when he had that amazing interception covering OBJ, when he was playing for the Rams. And now it's just like, it seems like the writing, almost written in blood, is on the wall. Like, this could be like his really, really, really kind of last stint with him. But, a lot of people are kind of excited about maybe Womack supplanting Oliver in as far as the slot. But then I look at it, I go like, well, one of our biggest issues, like we have this massive nosebleed as far as stopping the run, and Oliver would actually be perfect for stopping the run. But then we have this problem where we can't cover the slot fade to save our life. And it's just kind of like, well, that's kind of like where we need Womack. So I'm just kind of wondering, if you were Wilkes, right, and we're talking about first down, second down, third down, what, is it we have Oliver down there on the first down, and assuming we get a good kind of like stop there, and then we have Womack playing, or is it just Womack, hey, you come in on obvious third down, passing down kind of thing? Like, I'm not sure, because he hasn't had a lot of snaps himself, because when we look at a guy like Diamador Lenore, he had a time, like an adjustment period, to really go up against the proverbial wall, right? That adversity wall, to the point of like people were going like, oh man, this guy's awful. But he got enough games to where he got his reps in, and then by the time we went up against the Cowboys, right? Like he had like 3 games of really good games where you could see people were targeting him, and then he just started intercepting the ball. I just wonder, like, would there be enough reps for Womack like that to get those reps, and how many games would we lose just by kind of having Womack in there trying to figure that out? You know, like we're not in the 49ers have already shown we're not in the phase of development right now, right? When they kind of looking at the quarterback position, everything else, I'm just wondering, do you think that Wilkes can really afford to play such a young guy at such a like pivotal position? Probably, if we're being honest, probably the hardest position on defense to play is that nickel role. So I just kind of curious as to your thoughts. Do you think all 3 of these guys that we're kind of bringing back on, if they'll be redshirted? And it's not like Womack's going to come in next week. Like, let's say he doesn't get redshirted. It's not like he's going to come in next week and just start playing. Like, that could be till near the end of December, right? So that, or December, November at the earliest that we could kind of see him.
Yeah. I mean, as far as Isaiah Oliver, I don't think he should be in there on first down because that's base defense. Typically, you're going to run 3 linebackers, and your strong linebacker, probably Oren Burks, is then going to come out on nickel packages, and that's when you see Oliver. And then I think where you're going to, if I'm Steve Wilkes, what I would do with Womack is I'd put him in at the boundary on the obvious passing downs and move Lenore over to the nickel.
Yes. Okay.
And then Isaiah Oliver's not on the field, and Womack's not playing nickel where you're going to be forced to do a lot of run fit, and run tackling, because that's clearly been his weakness. And hopefully he can work on that some, like you said, without hopefully costing us too many games in the process. But I think he has good coverage. I think he's a ball hawk. And I'd like to see more of him. I mean, ever since I saw him in that Green Bay game, he had 2 picks, and one of them with the big return and where he ran the route for the guy, and the other one where he fought Romeo Dobbs on his way to the ground and took a ball away from a much bigger receiver. Both were pretty impressive to me.
How would you feel about Dante Johnson, which if there was ever a current 49er jersey I wish I would have bought a long time ago, it should have been Dante Johnson. I mean, that man has somehow outlasted everybody by getting cut all at the same time. How would you feel about him ahead of Oliver as far as in that nickel cornerback role?
I mean, at this point, I'd kind of take anybody over Isaiah Oliver. He's really good at the line of scrimmage and making plays in the run game, but he's just absolutely burnt toast in the pass game, and it's just too easy. During the Bengals game, I was just basically like, look where Isaiah Oliver is. That's probably where the ball's going. And I was there at the game, and it was depressing knowing that for sure. So I don't know. It's crazy. Would this be his 10th time back on the team, Dante Johnson?
I don't
Jordan
know.
Matthews is up there like 7 or 8 times, and obviously Josh Johnson has been on the team. I was told only 3 times. It seemed like more than that. But I mean, he's been on like 17 different teams, so maybe that's what was making me inflate that number. But those are like the 3 biggest 49ers boomerangs. So if you told me that Dante Johnson had been re-signed, I wouldn't be totally shocked. It just seems like death taxes and re-signing Dante Johnson, cutting and then re-signing Dante Johnson every season. It seems like a tradition for the 49ers. So who am I to get in the way of tradition?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's pretty scary because he's coming off an ACL, isn't he? I mean,
he's
his ACL just at the end of the season.
He's just like that. You got those 2 cars, right? You got the one that you just keep waxed up and cleaned and washed, and you don't really take it out much. It's just maybe your Sunday driving. But your favorite car is that one that with the bucket seats in the back. It's got a hole in it. Your wife doesn't know why you still have it. Quit driving that rusty thing. I mean, he's just that old reliable car. I don't know what it is. The new car smell is completely gone. It
Totally gone.
it squeaks every time it turns, but you just love it. Push button radio, everything.
There you go. Shell says Jags O-line is pretty stout. Not much to be said on their defense. However, if keyword we make careless mistakes, it'll make the Jags D-line look good. Well, the Jags have Josh Allen, the other Josh Allen on their D-line, who's a pretty solid D end. And they have on the other bookend is the one they spent the number 1 overall pick on because they had back-to-back number 1 overall, first team ever to go back-to-back number 1 overall picks with Trevor Lawrence, and then I'm blanking on the guy's name who they took from, was it Florida? Something like that?
Yeah, so Jags defense, really, their secondary is getting grossly overlooked. They are the quintessential, bend, don't break. And as bad as the 49ers have been on defense, they're leading the league with 11 interceptions, and then right there behind them is the Jags. And what that means is that this offensive line doesn't get just a little extra pinch of time for our guy Brock Purdy to make an anticipatory throw, put it in the area where that wide receiver will be breaking out of their route to then catch it. If you leave anything there in front of this Jags defense, it's going to get intercepted. They're just like the 49ers. They're absolutely filthy, and if you make a mistake, it's going to cost you. It's not going to hit their hands. It's not going to go to the next down. It's going to be the other team's ball. So actually, what I'm really kind of concerned about is this secondary that will absolutely make you pay. And then also too, kind of looking at it, it just stinks that that defense that's very, very stingy and they're tough to move the ball on, is that they had a bye week the same time that we had a bye week. And on top of that, their last game wasn't a Sunday game. It was a Thursday night game.
Oh, so it's like a mini bye and a bye.
Yeah. I mean, they got to rest, heal up, and then hit the books come Monday, whereas like we were just kind of just resting and then needing to kind of mentally, just we were licking our wounds. So yeah, by the time Monday, Tuesday hit and our guys were just trying to mentally get some mental health, some me time, to kind of get back and step into themselves. These guys were probably already opening up their books and watching tape and video and everything like that. So it's just, this schedule is just very, very unforgiving.
No doubt about it. And it's pretty crazy that, the Jags are coming off their bye. And guess what? The Bengals were coming off their bye, and so were the Browns. And that's not the end of it, folks. We end up playing one more team this season to make 4 total coming off their byes. I don't know how that happens when obviously every team averages 1 bye per season, has 1 bye per season.
Oh,
schedule makers did us no favors on that one. That's for sure.
Well, Bulky is just absolutely licking his chops. Cannot wait to look from one box to the other box and look at Jed York as he's in his box. Just he's probably in there too, trying to. He really wants to win this game. And when I'm thinking about it, like Doug Peterson and that young quarterback that they got over there, I just feel like with all this extra time, they could really carve this defense up. Because he's got a little bit more mobility than Burrow does, and he's got a special arm. I mean, everybody knows that. What I think, like not the average fan knows, is just quite how much mobility that quarterback has. And so if we're not containing the gaps over here, we're going to be in some serious trouble. Also, too, back to the Bengals game. And what I see as a potential issue or concern, right? This offense, they've only scored 17 points for last 3 weeks. I think that's duly noted. But again, when you go back and you watch the tape, I think what's really kind of alarming is that when they were trying to run the ball, the Bengals knew. So, anybody here is wanting to podcast or do anything like that, and you just want to seem, like you're kind of like hip to it or onto it, but rewatch that game and then watch how they set up blitzes almost every single time when we're running. So they have basically like 5 guys, 6 guys on the line. We just have no gaps at all. So yes, our offensive line isn't the best, but we're not doing our offensive line any favors when they can just tell when we line up in our formation what we're going to be running out of it. And that was something that Kyle Shanahan was really, really good about, was his ability to Frankenstein everybody in and out of formations. And we're not doing that anymore. You once a week, you'd see this crazy formation where he would just do like 5 or 6 different things at the line of scrimmage, all this movement, and then we get the ball and run. And we're just not, they literally would just go like, they would pinch in their nickel cornerback, wouldn't even cover any of our slot wide receivers or anything like that, and just go straight, like not even looking to their left or to the right. They just knew to go in on that play and just lined up right on the line of scrimmage. Now, why Brock Purdy didn't check out of it, or if he's given that kind of permission, I don't know, but it was rough.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I turned to my buddies at the game at least one play where Charlie Warner came in, and I'm like, oh, Warner's in, it's a run. So that's part of it. When you have backup tight ends who are half tight ends where Warner only blocks and Dwelly only catches, that telegraphs the play. Trent Williams clearly wasn't there to telegraph the play with his stance, which typically, some other creators might mention. Yeah, it's interesting. There's some interesting comments up here I wanted to get to. Randy Daytona said Trevor Lawrence has 46 turnovers in 3 years. Only Carr and Allen are worse. Then he said Mahomes has 45. And he said, so what did he say? So interceptions don't mean S, I guess.
I think the point that he's trying to make is that Purdy doesn't have enough interceptions yet to get to that elite club. So we're going to need you to bump those numbers up, Purdy, so you can be one of the big boys. Get
but
to the
it's
table,
not
son.
the number of interceptions. it's the number of wow plays versus interceptions. That's the thing. And unfortunately, young Brock doesn't have a ton of those wow plays.
Well, the other thing too is
Cowboys.
Well, the other thing too is how much that they're asked to throw the football. I mean, when you look at the 49ers, we're 27th in a passes attempted this year, and then our run game has just absolutely fallen off of a cliff. So if they know that there's 26 other teams that are going to throw more than you, so they know that you're probably going to try and run it, and then you're not successful, they're selling out on stopping the run at all costs. And then we're not, then when we're forced to throw, they know then they can just pin their ears back and go for us. So, we have to stop being so predictable on offense. And that's what kind of makes all those turnovers by Brock Purdy so much more painful, because we're not throwing the ball that much, and then we're turning it over. Mahomes does have 2 Super Bowls. I'm gonna agree with that statement.
I mean, 3 that he's been to, but yeah, 2 rings. I agree. Yeah. And then he said he only has 1 weapon and he's winning. That's true. So, it's interesting for sure. And he said Andy Reid and the defense are not weapons. Yeah, the Chiefs D is looking pretty elite, especially against the Dolphins in Frankfurt.
Where do you, when you think about our defense, where do you rank it right now? Because honestly, I've got them out of the top 5.
Oh yeah,
as of right now, because I know everybody because it was like when you talk about Michael Jordan, everyone just thinks about what an offensive dynamo he was, but really, I mean, that guy was sometime, and just at your shooting guard, was the best defensive player on the court. Right. And then you had Scottie Pippen, who was one of the best defensive players there. And then you had Dennis Rodman, who was one of the best defensive players. But everyone's going to think about those bowl teams as these unstoppable Goliaths on the offensive end. But it was really, their bread and butter was on defense. True. Yeah. No, I would not put any shade on Mahomes. And I can't justify Purdy's poor play. I see a lot of content creators trying to justify Purdy's poor play. You watch the tape. I mean, it is what it is. Like it doesn't look. I can't justify or defend it. Like, you are what you are on tape. doesn't Kansas City draft well and use their rookies if they're talented? Maybe he doesn't need all the weapons because they're not considered weapons. And, that's an interesting, kind of a weird standoffish point, Sentinel football. Ted, this last draft that we had, we drafted all these players. I get it. We didn't have a first round, second rounder, right? But we've had a penchant for finding talent, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, even seventh round as byproduct of Purdy. But the only contribution that we've gotten from this year's draft class has been Moody, our kicker. Like that's not enough to get it done. I get it that we're loaded. I get it that we're talented. But during the third round, wouldn't it have been better to have drafted a swing tackle or guard or something of that sort, right? Like
I wanted Darnell Washington, the big tight end for the Steelers.
Oh yeah,
tackle's best friend, right?
Yes. 100%. Bookended with him and the Kittle. I wanted the exact same thing too. That's so funny that you said that. That's exactly the same thing, and that just
he went 6 picks after Jair Brown. So we easily could have packaged something disgusting. And moved that Cam Latu pick up.
And the other reason why I wanted him because Juwan Jennings, he's coming up for his next contract. I was just going like, hey, you need a blocking, because we're using Jennings almost like a tight end. Like, there's your upgrade. And then we're talking about it in the red zone. The guy would have been it. Great one. I'm going to try and stick to facts. You keep holding me accountable. And I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna bring it.
There you go. Speaking of being held accountable, I should pay the bills real quick. Do a quick commercial for the Travelstead Group. That's the logo up in the corner. TTG. It stands for the Travelstead Group. They're a retail and hospitality logistics company, and they do transportation and warehousing for brick and mortar. They do FFE, which is fixed furniture and equipment. They do OSE, which is operating supplies and equipment. They do new store openings. They do rollouts, relocations, decommissions. From the first mile to the final mile and everywhere in between, Travelstead has you covered. Let them know how they can help you via air, ocean, and land. Closed loop solutions for retail and hospitality. Nick and Henry are my contacts there. They're great fellas. Also, these are very complex operations. Invariably, there's at least fine tuning, if not things that go wrong. And so, it's good to know that they have 100% US based support. So you're not going to end up in some call center and overseas where they have no clue what you do. These guys know exactly what you're going through and they will make it right. So check out their website. It's in the description for the show. It's in my YouTube about page, my Twitter bio, Insta or Facebook. If you follow me there, click on the link, check out the video, and be sure you tell them Ted sent you. So thanks, Gammon, for letting me take care of that. And thanks, everybody. In advance for your help on that. Appreciate it. Randy says, more ints, Purdy, less playoff wins. That's pretty funny. I think we were talking backstage and I was telling you that I feel like, Brock Purdy anymore, it's a little bit stressful if we have to do a comeback. If you put him behind the 8 ball. It worries me, or if the ball's wet, I think now is starting to worry me. I don't know if we talked about that on the show or backstage. So
there's one thing I never liked was wet balls. Absolutely not. So I don't blame Purdy for that either. But here's the thing: I wouldn't have blamed Lance. I wouldn't have blamed Purdy. And especially let's say Sam Darnold comes in, like you better script that, so that way the ball is not too much in his hands, Darnold's hands at all, very much. I can't blame a guy who's making during the offseason, he didn't even count for a top 51 for payroll during the offseason. Like that's how little amount of money that he's making there. His job is just to distribute the ball to the freakish aliens that are there. I solely blame it, and I like what Sentinel said here. He said Purdy's poor play is a reflection of Kyle Shanahan's scheming and play calling. They're connected by the hip. The difference Purdy and everyone else is Purdy has executed his scheme better. Yeah, I mean that is your just do as you're told, and that's what Purdy's doing. But yeah, I mean I hold Kyle Shanahan responsible because he's going like, hey, if you want to be the starting quarterback, you have to do what you're told. Well, I'm doing what I'm told, and things are not working out well. And then somebody else said, do you think Kyle Shanahan will let Purdy call audibles? And no, I don't think he won't even let people call timeouts. So, but I I mean, I do kind of remember all that.
There you go. Welcome VT 2022 to the chat. Also, Cheeseball, he was saying that Brock is a chump. I think that's being a little bit harsh. I called him mid in the off season, got into a lot of trouble for that, and then got all the way down to 6-9 after the Cowboys game, and getting back closer to mid. I was 8-12 after the Browns. I was going to go 11-15 after the Vikings, but the interceptions came after the concussion. So I waited and then put him back to 11-15 after the Bengals. But we're getting back towards that sort of 14-18. Mid maybe is the wrong way to put it. I don't want to be pejorative or negative, but, middle of the pack average. I said a lot of times I feel like the 49ers have the cushiest QB gig in the NFL, and I'll stand by. I think Tua is right up there with Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts as three of the most cushy QB gigs in the NFL. QBR.
Not touching that. I'm not touching that. I don't do the QBR stats or the other stuff, because some of it makes sense, but some of it doesn't. Like, even when we look at pressures or all the pressure numbers that they have for Bosa, and I've seen like either the pressures or the hurries, and when I kind of look back at the game, I'm kind of like, gosh, because they gave him so many pressures for Bosa, and to be honest with you, I was kind of like, I don't remember, like I just didn't see like those legitimate pressures. Maybe got into the backfield, but I didn't feel like he was really hurrying Burrow at all.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's see, they're just arguing about who's better, Mahomes or Purdy.
Mahomes. There's zero chance. But we're talking Niners, so we can't go back, folks.
Well, people said I hated Brock, and I'm like, no, I don't hate Brock. I like him a lot. I hate the hyperbole. I hate comparing him to Montana, Brady, Mahomes, Josh Allen. And of course, every bad game that Josh Allen, somebody comes out and says, oh, like Purdy doesn't get that same treatment. It's like, well, he doesn't have the body of work, and like Josh Allen basically has Stephon Diggs and not much else. So
I just don't think that Purdy is Montana, but I do think that he's a special young man who still has a chance to improve. I mean, when I saw his dad crying when they beat the Buccaneers and just how proud his dad was, I just was like, man, I wish I could do something like that would make my dad that proud. One day it'll happen. Maybe today's that day. Maybe he'll tune in.
There you go. Anything I can do to help, Gammon, just let me know. Debate is healthy. We don't want an echo chamber, where we're just like, oh, you're great. No, you're great. It's good to have dissenting opinions and different viewpoints. Maybe not Jim Everett the Great. I got to get to his comment down here, but most of them are fine. And I'm just kidding. Even Rams fans, they're allowed to have them. But I told them they're going to run back 5-12, and they didn't believe me, and it's starting to look more and more true. We'll see. Sentinel says, let alone young QB like Purdy, Matt Ryan had to be private conversation with them about his micromanagement. Yeah, absolutely. Heyo.
Yo.
Like Vermeil said, we rally around Kurt Warner. McVay said we rally around Carson Wentz. Ooh, good luck with that, Jimbo. I think you're.
Now, theoretically, I mean, it could work out, but man, Wentz and Darnold, they have this. Those two guys can just make some ridiculous throws, but they turn right around and they give the ball up. But McVay would be the one guy who could do that. Let's see here. He was MVP this season. Yeah, not two coneheads.
Not two coneheads. I'm not a conehead. I like Grant, but I disagree with him on a pretty regular basis, Steve-O. So
I think
and also Grant's not a
smart.
fan. I am, so there's a big difference there.
Well, Grant's smart because what he realizes that with the people, the audience, the niche that he has are not people who really want to learn about football. It's people who just like TMZ. They want the trashy garbage kind of stuff, right? Like your Reality Housewives of blah 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 type show. Like that's kind of what that's for. But he's making oodles of cash. But he just realized like, hey, not everybody actually wants to talk ball and think about it critically. So he knows the right buttons for people to push. Remember, Jimmy said, they do. They become predictable. They become predictable because it was funny when we were going that 5-game winning streak. Some people were going like, "Oh, remember when Jimmy said, your plays suck," and then they're using that to mock him. And then now that he's not doing well, now people are. It's funny, but the problem is, and you could even see it last year and even like 2 years ago. Kyle Shanahan's a rhythm calling coach, and so when he doesn't get in rhythm or in that kind of like a sync. It goes out from underneath him. The rug gets pulled out from his feet. Kyle Shanahan does a really good job of scripting the plays, just like his dad Mike Shanahan did for Steve Young. Would script out the first like, hey, here's our opening drive. And he'd have Steve just repeat it all back to him verbatim. They'd go over like 16, 20 plays, like blah 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 blah, blah, and they would just go back and forth until they had all. Kyle's a chip off the old block. And then what Kyle is, right, is where Andy Reid's more of like a schemer. Like he likes to scheme things, and then that's how the game is going to go. And he doesn't deviate too much off of that. Kyle is like what I would call like a scab picker. If he finds out that you can't cover Kittle that game, Kittle is going to have a 200-yard game. If you can't stop Deebo Samuel from running the football, Deebo Samuel is going to tote that rock. Like, He goes after that one thing, and then he just maniacally just goes after it. But if all of a sudden he can't get into any kind of like a play calling rhythm, that's when it looks like, hey, how come we don't have an identity, or where's our plan? Poof, there it goes, because now he doesn't know what scab to pick. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was unwrapping a lifesaver, so I didn't want to hear the crinkle of the wrapper. Well, Can You Dig It, I think, is a new audience member. So welcome, Can You Dig It? Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Jimmy was the problem, not Kyle. And like you said, I think he does kind of, I do think, I mean, like when it's CMC, he'll definitely do that, where he'll just run CMC forever and never give him any break. And part of it is that CMC wants that too. But I do feel like sometimes Kyle outsmarts himself, where something's working. He's like, oh, well, they're going to expect me to do that, so I'm going to do something really smart and different, and actually, defeat yourself by getting too cute with it. But I get that scab picker. I like that. I hadn't heard that before, and I can see a lot of that in Kyle for sure. I would say also, you talked about rhythm and getting in the rhythm, and then it reminded me of like the rhythm method and a joke, and it kind of can apply. It can have the double entendre here, but. You know what they call people that practice the rhythm. And for people who don't know the rhythm method, it's basically like you don't use contraception. You just have sex when the woman is like not fertile, essentially, during that time of the month where they're not fertile.
This is probably going to be the best segue in 49ers chat history right here. Once you bring it home.
Well, so what do you call people who practice the rhythm method? You call them parents, because it almost never works and they end up getting pregnant anyway. And so I when you were saying that, I was thinking that doesn't work, and Kyle's rhythm sometimes doesn't work. And I just thought it was kind of funny. I was going to throw something else in there, but I don't want to be stereotypical about that. But anyway, bottom line is, Kyle, when the rhythm's working, he will just stay with it. And when it's not, like you said, he can be very ineffective. So it's something to keep an eye on. So V2 is also saying, Kyle built the O-line. Yeah, or didn't build the O-line. Gammon,
or was that Adam Peters, or was that our new vice president?
A lot of us wanted a right tackle this offseason. We didn't get it. I'd love it if McKivitz was our swing tackle instead of our starting right tackle. But Jim Everett's sticking to his guns. Rams will win the West. I mean, not in 2023, bro, but hey, maybe in a few years. We'll see.
If I can be 100% honest, right, and I take off the rose-colored glasses that I have on for the 49ers, if you were to tell me, strip away my fandom and pick who's going to win the NFC West, honestly, and I know the 49ers have not been playing their best ball in a month, but my money would still be on the 49ers. That is just, the Rams right now, you guys need to focus on what you need to do to go get Bo Nix out of Oregon. That's where your focus concentration needs to be is how do we get Bo?
There you go. Jim Everett the Great was saying that I was in the Cheesy Wayne Breezy video. Cheesy Wayne Breezy, yeah. That was fun. We shot down by the Debo mural in San Jose, and then we shot some at Levi's. I just hope my dance part didn't make it in there. That's all I can say, because it was terrible. I would be so embarrassed. But I guess Jim Everett's seen it, and I haven't yet, so I got to check it out.
It's
also,
good.
Were you part of the or I mean not part, but did you see speaking of Breezy, somebody messaged me the other night about him and Eric Armstead having beef.
I knew this is where this is going.
And then I went to look and it was deleted. I'm like, come on, somebody. I wasn't that nosy but now I guess I am being nosy. I'm just curious what happened and what was it all about?
So Wayne Breezy, he made some sweaters and he got them ordered, everything like that. You know how much money you got to kind of pour into that.
Yeah.
Long story short, it said the blueprint right there on the side, and it had a picture of Armstead kind of there. And Armstead was kind of he kind of called out Breezy and was like, "Whoa, I didn't know this was going on. I didn't realize you got a hold of my marketing team and everything like that." And that's when, because he's kind of using his likeness technically to sell that. So then Breezy was like, whoop, and just quickly kind of snatched those off. I think what I would have liked to have seen is if Armstead would have reached out to him and first of all, public paddling, got it. You know what I mean? Because you got to let other people know you can't just run off and do that. But it would have been like, hey, man, just let me get 10% of the profits and then send me a free sweater and then I'll wear it, during the next press conference or something like that. Or, because that was somebody else's design. And that's how I would have did it. I'm from Sacramento, 9-1 Sizzle. So is Eric Armstead. He's an outstanding man in the community. So I think that if he would have just did that, I think that would have been absolutely amazing.
Randy says, Tez a soldier. I thought I told you. A big man, beware. Some bars. Thanks, Randy. I need to lose a little weight on that note. But with Eric Armstead, all right, I'm sorry to hear that happened. It's a bummer, and hopefully they'll get it resolved. And it's a bummer for Breezy as far as investing all that money and probably gonna have a good market for those. But shoot, and Eric Armstead he's a pillar in the community, and he had a huge game against the Bengals, as we mentioned, with the 2 sacks. Those are kind of the only 2 drives we stopped in that game. I felt like were due to Eric Armstead's sacks. So hopefully all that gets worked out okay. So interesting. TMZ Grant. I feel like I learned some football stuff from Grant too, though. Not completely devoid of football knowledge.
The best parts about Grant is during the off season when he does his very quick, good, not so good, and he just kind of goes through it. When he just has to just do I feel like he's the most punctual, factual person when he kind of does that. Just meat and potatoes, not trying to get to that 10-minute mark to go ahead and make that monetized amount of money, but he just really gives it where he loses me, or where I'm sure to kind of turn it off, is when he starts getting toxic, and then he's trying to put in his own narrative into there because he wants to create stress and rile up the fan base, right? Because Right, exactly. That's the only part where then I kind of like got to separate that. But yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's smart. He's playing people, and this is kind of what it is.
No doubt about it. There was something else up there that I wanted. Oh, well, Alberto Soto in the house saying, "What up, fam? We got Carson Wentz in NFC West." So yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier. I don't think anyone's too afraid of Carson Wentz. Gammon likened him to Sam Darnold, who I don't think many people are afraid of. It's kind of interesting. They're both gingers too, right? Darnold has red hair.
I was gonna leave that that and the QBR is where I right there.
Well, that's interesting. So let's see here. Randy's getting accused. He said he's unsub, but apparently Jim Everett saw him. Maybe he's just playing with him. Probably. Grant Cohn needs to go back to his paper route where he belongs. Oh my! Shots fired. Michelle. Randy says you wish. He's denying it. All right, we need screenies, folks. Got to have screenies if we're gonna throw on these kind of accusations. Jim the Great needs a woman. He spends all.
Well, why does it have to be a woman?
Oh, there you go. An SO, significant other. And saying the same thing every time. We should start a GoFundMe to get Jim the Great somewhat. All right,
I'd say this. There's nothing finer than a 49er fan. So maybe he's just trying to get to where the air is crisp. And I don't know what the demographic of people look like where he's at. So maybe he's been to a few games. And he's like, look, I know they wear different colors than me, but I got to get some of that. Grant Cohn was able to buy a house in Oakland Hills recently. Do you have any idea how much money you'd have to do that? No. I'm currently stationed in Tennessee, and I feel like I'll never be able to move back to California after joining the Army, which is crazy because it's literally too expensive. But I do know my wife's from Oakland, and yeah, that is expensive. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And I was in a Ramjet. No, come on, guys.
Getting ugly out there. The mud is flinging and slinging. Brian Colt says I sometimes just listen.
And that's why you're married, Bryant. Congratulations. You stay that way. Never change. Never change.
Happy wife, happy life, like they say. Or happy spouse, happy house, I think Red Jet turned me on to that one. Sentinels, when you're in Northern Cal, gotta sell tapes out of the trunk, the car. Yeah. No, I mean, and people give Grant grief because he's a Nepo baby, and Kyle too. But, when it comes to that, I always just say, that gets your foot in the door, but it doesn't cause you to rise to greatness. And I think they both have. So I think they both have enough talent. They obviously got started earlier and achieved greatness sooner than they would have through normal channels. But I think that both of them probably would have made it either way. I'm willing to say that. I'll probably get some grief for that, but we'll see. Randy Daytona's and Ramilia's chat all the time. Ramilia's a good guy.
I've talked to him, Rudy. Yeah, I mean he's not too bad. I got a question for you before we go too far off the course. So we've won 5 games so far.
Yeah.
We're about to like these games, this what we've got left on the schedule. And this is kind of what I like for the 49ers because we always have these really hard, rough schedules before the season ends. And I always feel like these schedules, because they're so brutal at the end, we start playing playoff football comparatively to like other teams, right? Like the Lions, by the time like their last like 3 or 4 games, I don't feel like they're going to be really playing playoff football. So mentally, right, they're kind of just not there. But when you look at the NFC, what do you think are the minimum wins that a team needs in order to basically get like we're talking about, right? Because it used to only be 6 teams, now it's 7 teams. So I think legitimately you could I think if you get 10 wins, I think that you're in. So by that, right, like the 49ers technically only really need 5 more wins. 5 more wins in order to kind of squeak into the playoffs. that sort of thing. But then that would also too that make us kind of 10-7. What do you how many games do you see us winning at the end? And then do you kind of agree with that? Like, hey, 10 and we're in. So basically, we won 5 games. So is it just like, hey, as soon as we get to 5 games, we're good? Because I think like even if we were the 7th team in the playoffs, no team would want to play us. You know what I mean? The first round. Assuming certain things get kind of either masked with deodorant, right? We kind of hide Oliver, and then we get some production from the run game, which is what I assume would have to happen. But do you agree with that? Like 10 wins?
10 should do it. I mean, because here's the thing. I look at it even more simply than that. It's name 7 teams in the NFC that you think could be ahead of the Niners at the end of the season. And it's really difficult. You could go Eagles, you could go Cowboys, you could go Lions, Seahawks, I guess. But they haven't looked like, well, it's hard. The Ravens are really good. But one of the teams that you probably might have put up there was the Vikings, and now they have no Kirk Cousins. So you got to assume that's going to knock them out of contention unless Josh Dobbs can somehow put it together. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot of NFC teams. The Saints, the Falcons, the Bucks. I don't know. I mean, I just it's hard to come up with 7 teams in the NFC. Clearly not the Giants. Shout out to Daniel Jones. That's a bummer that he has a season-ending injury. And obviously the Commanders are selling, so you got to assume they're not really looking to make the playoffs. So I don't know what 7 teams you could put ahead of us. And unfortunately, like we went from, oh yeah, we need that number 1 seed. Now we're talking about, are we going to squeak in? And I think that is realistic, especially given the rest of the season. We got the Jags on Sunday. Then we got that, the Bucks aren't necessarily easy at Levi's, and then the rough stretch of at Seattle, at Philly, Seattle, and at Levi's, the Seahawks and Levi's, and then obviously the Ravens on Christmas Day is going to be brutal, and that was one where I flip-flopped before the season started. I had thought that that we might beat them before the season began, and then when I found out that we were going to be negative 20 rest days this season and they were going to be +9. So literally have almost a month more rest by that point of the season. That's a huge difference and tough to overcome. And that was before. I mean, now it just seems like the Ravens are just playing better than us, period. So
you're playing better than a lot of people.
That defense looks stout, and Lamar is being freed up. They're
finally, what's crazy? What's crazy was that
Roman. So
what's crazy? The amount of fans that didn't think that we needed Lamar, right? Or the amount of fans, like I remember like one time, I think it was on Eric Crocker's show. And I was kind of like asking, just polling around. Cause like, I don't know. Sometimes you think it's a great idea, but then, you get blasted and you're like, okay, I know to tuck that one away and put it in the back of my mind and file that in the do not open box. But it's interesting when I said like, hey, since we're going to be paying somebody quarterback money, right? Because we were looking at, because the figures that I had for Bosa, I was saying we're going to be paying him, 37, 38 million. And a lot of people are going like, oh no, we're going to be paying him a little bit less than Aaron Donald. We ended up paying him like 35 million. I was like, at that quarterback price, would you trade? Because this was back when we didn't know if the Ravens were going to keep Lamar. I was like, would you trade Bosa for an MVP quarterback? Right. And I just thought a lot of people would say yes. They're like, absolutely not. There's no way. And I was just like, holy cow. Like, I was just like, all right, I guess. And the amount of like blasting that I got, I was just like, maybe I'm just looking at things differently. But it was crazy how people just didn't want a MVP caliber quarterback like that. And I guess my question to you would be, if Justin Fields came available during the offseason, would that be something that you'd pursue? And my thing is, I just don't know the only problem that I have is again, Kyle has a script. He doesn't want you getting into that character, that role, and ad-libbing. I feel like somebody like Lamar Jackson, somebody like Justin Fields he would have less hair on the sideline than I do right now. I just feel like Kyle Shanahan just couldn't let somebody else carry the stick and orchestrate the orchestra. I don't think he could do that. Someone said, Randy said, why the hell can't we get a great O-line? It's because the third round, we spend our third rounders like free money. And instead of developing a third rounder offensive lineman, we have to. We've got to go second round, first round, depending on what we do with Brandon Ayuk. But we've got to go first round offensive lineman. It'd be great if a tackle's there. If not, get a guard. But somewhere it's got to happen. Third round, we've got to get. If we didn't get a tackle in the first and second round, we got to get one in the third round, and then hopefully we still have Trent Williams. Let's say that something happens. Okay, heaven forbid. But this O-line that hasn't been able to keep any quarterback upright, right? Something happens to Brock Purdy. We tank faster than the Titanic. And it's just an awful ridden season. What do you think are the odds that Trent Williams sticks around for another year?
I think he will, but yeah, it's a question. It's not like I wouldn't bet my rent money if I paid rent. So yeah, I mean, it's a big question mark every season. He said he'll play out his contract. I don't think that'll be the case, but I think one more year. I mean, I think it'll depend on how we do. Obviously, if we win the Super Bowl, he's out. All right, as soon as he gets a ring, he's done. I think you could bank on that. But if we don't, and the core is there, and it looks like we're going to contend, I think he'll come back for at least one more year.
And so that's kind of the thing, right? So maybe last year, really, I mean, that's when we really start having the serious talks of last year being his last year. And that's the thing that would be frustrating for me as a Niners fan is I saw what we did with Alex Mack, and we didn't get his replacement, and then have Alex Mack train him up, square him away, right? Kind of have that year under the wing. It'd be nice to kind of get somebody that with a guy like Trent Williams, But what we do in the third round, when you think about, and I get it, you're not going to get, Pro Bowlers, all pros in the third round. Okay. I firmly, and I get that, but over, 7 years, right. A team typically only has 7 third round picks, and the amount of third round picks that we've had in the last 3 years is basically 4 years is what a team could conceivably get in a decade. And I kind of look at this team and I say, does it feel like we have a decade's worth of third rounders on our team, right? With all the third rounds that we had, there should be more production kind of coming out of that round. So to me, again, I kind of go back on this. If we don't really do, if this season kind of falls apart, this and the other, for me at the offseason, I'm going to really kind of start scrutinizing what did we do in those middle rounds? All those comp picks that we had in the third and fourth round, what was our position draft order, right, in the last 3 years? So starting from Alex Mack to where we are now, right? You can get some starters every once in a while. Your Fred Warner sneaks in there, but you're not expecting to get the best at whatever position in football in the third round. But that's kind of where I'm kind of looking at that. Definitely enough darts at the board, but just pretty horrible, egregious.
Yeah, no. During the offseason, I said a lot that, I think Kyle's a genius. It's set for when it comes to QBs because of passing on Mahomes for Cousins, not getting Cousins, passing on Brady to keep Jimmy after we lost the Super Bowl. And then Brady went and won one with the Bucks. when he wanted to come retire here, not passing on Stafford, but not getting Stafford, the Rams getting him, them winning a Super Bowl. And then even as recently as last season, 2022, starting with Purdy as QB3. I said it's pretty clear he wasn't our third best QB in 2022. And then I said basically I was saying third round running backs for a long time. And then I was like pretty much every third round pick not named Fred. Maybe Moody can change that. He started out perfect. He's been good since the Vikings game, which is just one game. But hey, keep it up, Moody. I know Brent Culp is rooting for you for sure. So yeah, I know it's a lot of, and then you dump all the Trey Lance first round picks, and there was a third in there too, 3 firsts and a third that we used to move up and pick Trey Lance. So that's a lot.
And then look at all those picks then that we gave for you couple that with all the picks that we gave for running back CMC, right? Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Like, I mean, we almost gave away, almost like a whole draft for CMC. So you really look at all that, and you really, like, in your mind, you go like, wow, as great as CMC is, and this is something too that I get a lot of flack for. But I'm like, with all those picks, if we would have leveraged that, fixed up O-line, maybe drafted a running back in the second round, right? Like, the Shanahans have been known to get production from nobodies out of that running back room. And if we just would have just really just built, because that was the big thing, right? You look at Lynch's presser when he was coming on to the 49ers as the GM, and he was really big on emphasizing, hey, we want to build from the trenches, right, out. And I'm looking at everything that they have just absolutely thrown on one trench, but not the other. Like, I'm not seeing that, that plural with trench. I'm not seeing the trenches part. And so, I really thought after last season, they would kind of go like, time to kind of look in the mirror. The scouting department goes like, hey, don't hate to be that guy, but maybe we should kind of start pouring some into the offensive line. And here's the thing. Now they may overcorrect. Now they're going to draft all these offensive linemen, which now this blocking scheme is really, really hard to learn. And now next year, we're going to have to wait till mid-season. Hopefully these guys get up to speed. Whereas they could have been having that this year, or, redshirted, something like that. But it's going to be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I hope they overcorrect. That'd be fine with me. I have a feeling they'll keep piecemealing it together until Trent Williams leaves. I think that's when we'll finally see an investment. But hope they prove me wrong. We'll see. Most of them should. Oh, okay.
Oh, they're talking about on. They're talking about a Friday. Yeah.
Randy's almost 50. The people watching movies die every day. That's true. We're getting to that point where our parents are dying and actors we grew up with are dying for sure. Shell says Pop should be here.
What are your as we kind of tie and put a bow on this amazing stellar show. Thank you for everybody being here for like an hour and a half. Incredible. Predictions for the game. So I have 2 predictions. Okay, the score, and then Brock Purdy's interception to touchdown ratio.
Oh yeah, somebody asked what was the over/under on Brock Purdy throwing an interception to Darius. I'm blanking on his name. The old Ram cornerback who left a couple years ago. I think it was when they gave Jalen Ramsey his big deal, and Darius. Blanking on his last name. Anyway, I will say that Purdy will throw 1 interception. The Niners will win, and the score will be 24-21, 49ers.
I'm gonna say Purdy throws 4 touchdowns. We score 40 points. No, I'm just joking. No, we'll, no, I think he definitely throws an interception. I don't know if it'll be like a bad interception, because people are trying to blame Brock Purdy like he threw a Jimmy Garoppolo interception to a linebacker during that game. But I was like, but the ball got tipped, and then the linebacker kind of got that. But I think Brock Purdy throws a touchdown, throws an interception, so I think he'll be 1-1. And then I think it's going to be like 21-17, 49ers 21-17. I think they're gonna have to put emphasis on time of possession, because we can't. When we went against the Dolphins, and I got a chance to be a guest speaker, kind of represent the 49ers against the Dolphins. I was on the Dolphins channel, and I was asked, why did I think that the 49ers were going to beat the Dolphins? And I said, time of possession, we're just not going to. We don't want to see your guys' wide receivers for 40 minutes. Like that, that's not going to work. And you go back and you look at that game, and I think the 49ers had the ball for damn near 40 minutes of that game. And the Dolphins were still pretty damn productive offensively with just the limited amount of offensive opportunities. I don't want Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson, who's a super underrated coach. I don't want to give him and Lawrence, who have had like 2.5 weeks to prepare for us. I don't want to see them with like half a month of just game planning and knowledge to just kind of tear this defense apart. So I think as long as we just commit to the run, and we just try to milk the clock, I think then we really want that low scoring game. And then I'm just thinking that CMC gets his 2 touchdowns. You remove that fumble that he had in the game against the Bengals, and I think that could have been another touchdown for him. So I see 2 touchdowns for CMC, a pick and an interception for Brock Purdy, 21-17.
All right, not too different. 24-21, 21-17, pretty same ballpark. Or same church, just not same pew, as Ponte would say. So, well, good. Well, Gammon, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again soon. And thanks to everyone in the audience who stopped by. You guys are great. Makes our job so much easier when we have lively interactions and intelligent discourse, which you guys had both of today. And I'll just say peace and go Niners.